Welcome to the call. Thanks for being here. I know you have a lot of places you could spend your energy and your time, so I appreciate you being here. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to contribute to you. Tonight I'm going to share a tool that I've used over the last, I don't know, decade or so. Um, anyway, a tool I've used both with myself and with tons of clients, so really hundreds of clients, and used thousands of times. To create great results. And I've really searched the globe over the last 20 years to find the most effective as well as elegant, in the mathematical sense, elegant solutions to and pieces to the path. So this is one of those pieces I'm going to share tonight. And I always do these for two reasons. One is I'm here obviously to contribute to you in the hopes that your life will be improved for the better, whether we ever see each other again or not. And I'm also obviously here to market my services and my courses, and I talk a little bit about the end, but for the most part, this is going to be solid content and just deliver value to you. This particular process I've used a few times, and I normally start, any of these talks with, talking about how I got to where I am and why I do what I do. I'm going to skip most of that for this call, and if you're interested in that, you can see and hear more about my personal path on an audio clip. It's about 19 minutes long, which is one of the reasons I'm skipping it tonight. I will share a couple of really relevant pieces, though. Shortly after I got engaged, I tested positive for HIV, which was really a shock to us both. And I was successful for nearly 15 years now without using any medications until about a year ago. And one of the tools that I used to keep my viral load down was this tool. I use that and another tool that I'll probably talk about in a couple of weeks on one of these calls. And I don't know if you know anything about HIV, but viral load determines the rate of progression of the condition as well as your rate of contagion. Anything over about 50,000, you start to become exponentially more contagious, and the prognosis isn't so good. And I'd gotten up to about 130,000, and my doctor started getting concerned. They're always concerned when you're not on medications, by the way. And I asked her if I had a couple of months. She said, sure, of course, before I had to make a decision about medications. And I knew that stress and other things were, emotions were cofactors. One of the primary cofactors, in fact, to HIV not doing well is stress. So I went away for a couple of months, did some Vipassana meditation, and I cleared all of the, I used this tool to clear the entire area on my timeline, which will make sense in a few minutes, around my divorce that had caused tremendous stress. And my viral load, when I went up there, was at 130,000. And when I came back, I took another test and it was down to 300 with no zeros, just 3 digits, 326, I think, which was, miraculous to them, to Western medicine. So this can also, it does lots of things for you. It can do lots of things and be very effective in lots of contexts. But what I'd like to do is just get into what I'm supposed to say about it, because who knows what'll happen if I don't. We're going to talk tonight about your internal unconscious organization of time, and specifically how to clear out negative emotional gestalts and specific traumatic events. Most of my clients, the average person reports a 70% reduction in whatever patterned response is, the emotional reaction that they typically have. This, of course, increases choice and freedom. There's often a lightness, like people just feel lighter. There's more spaciousness, and that results in increased energy and greater creativity. First, I'd like to set it into a context. Everything that I do is in this context that I'm calling personal evolution, which is really the movement through stages, empirically proven stages of development. I'm an evolutionary guide. Somebody asked me, what do I say that you do? I'm supposed to be on this webinar in a week or so for somebody. I said, well, here's the long answer, but nobody really understands that. It's that I help people accelerate movement through these stages. And those stages are here's the simplest version of them, and I'll label them a few ways so that you can get a real taste for it. There's pre-rational, then rational, and transrational. There's egocentric to ethnocentric to world-centric. In fact, if you look at most of the conflict around the world right now, it's coming from an ethnocentric place. Me and my people against everybody else. Unconscious to conscious to superconscious. from instinct to intellect to intuition, from vengeance to justice to grace, which is one of my favorites, from being emotionally stuck to having emotional choice to being emotionally free, from growing up, waking up, and showing up, which is this one I got off a Zen website. I thought it was kind of cute. It was obviously the same basic 3 stages of ego development. So what I do, and what this work does, is really accelerate that process. So rather than taking 20 years, it takes a year or two. Once everything's in place, it takes on a life of its own. Most clients report. So where does this fit in that process? Well, there's 3 basic phases to that work. And the first phase is clearing or healing. You can also call it resolution or whatever you want to call it. Some people call it healing. I prefer to call it clearing. Whatever the work is, though, it's cleaning out the basement. And that phase 1, I'm heavily reliant on this particular tool. So what are negative emotions? We don't want to say that any emotions are bad, but I will say that any emotions that, cause cancer or have, you go from HIV positive to AIDS, those are probably negative. Anything that causes harm to your body. And the paradox here, we want to be really cautious. Oh, anyway, any emotions that cause dis-ease in the body, we're gonna say those are negative. What we want to be vigilant about, and the paradox here is that the quickest way to resolve negative emotions without these tools is to allow yourself to feel them. So we don't want to get into the business of repression. That causes regression. But what we want to do is clean stuff out that's just built up. So why clear them out? They're currently robbing you of creative energy is one of the reasons. They are your background processes taking up RAM on your computer, if that metaphor makes sense to you. I like it a lot. It's running and it's sort of taking up memory space, and you want to kill those processes, delete those processes. You'll experience increases in energy and creativity in general, more freedom and choice. And it's really, the clearing of your foundation. Any personal work should start with this. It's as if, in let's say relationship coaching, you wouldn't teach somebody dating strategies before you clear out the resentments and, maybe grief from the previous relationship. You would, of course, start there so they could actually have fruitful new relationships. So that it really bears out in any effective work. You want to clear stuff out from the basement first. You'll be more gracious with everyone in the context of your life. Obviously, if you're feeling 70% less anger or 70% less fear, you're going to have improved relationships. And of course, it accelerates your movement to the next stage to clean this stuff out. So that's the why of it. Which ones are we interested in clearing? And I'll say that there's a few usual suspects, but first we want to clear out the disproportionate negative emotions. Now, that's tricky because, what's disproportionate, right? It's different for everybody. And it is different for everybody. So I'm going to say that it's the ones that you feel too quickly, too easily, too intensely, or for too long of a duration, or too frequently for your own taste. And usually people know which ones these are. People know that if they're, it's like, God, fear is always getting in the way, or they're just talking about what stops them. And consistently there's 1 or 2 words that come up, like fear and anger, or anxiety, like that. So that's the criteria we're using. By the way, this is also the criteria that I use when I tell clients to track the difference that they've noticed over the following week when we do this work on any particular emotion. So, yeah, good. So with that, here are the usual suspects: anger, fear, guilt, shame, anxiety, and sadness. By the way, this doesn't mean, of course, that you don't then feel that when something new happens that impacts one of these. It would be, a logical end. There are mental practices to engage in to build new muscles in your mind. And I believe that navigating your interiors, actually, I'm just going to assert this as a fact, that navigating your interiors is a physical act. It's a physical activity. And a lot of times people don't take that into consideration. And I've written about this, but what happens is we hold ourselves to this standard that if we read a book or we get a new idea from a workshop or from a teacher or from a friend, that we should then automatically behave differently because we know this thing. But knowledge is very different. Insight is very different than integration or behavioral demonstration. And we want to keep that in mind. We wouldn't learn, have one tennis lesson and expect to play tennis incredibly well. That would be silly. But we apply that same silly standard to ourselves when we're learning a new interpersonal skill or intrapersonal skill. So it's something to bear in mind. So how do we clear them out? And first I'll just ask, any questions so far? Any questions, comments, observations, or reactions? You can use the chat window to ask any questions. Or not? Okay, great. So we all have an unconscious organization of time. And there's two really that are present, and every human being has some version of one of these two. And the first version, in no particular order, by the way, but the first version is future's in front of you, and present is in your body, like actually inside of your body somewhere, or passes through your body. And the past is behind you. About the other half of the population has the past on the left, future, present in front of them, and the future on the right. So left to right orientation. Somebody asked, in languages where, in cultures where languages go from right to left, is it reversed? The answer is no, in my experience. So that's the short answer on that. I didn't know last time. But generally, everybody has one of those two. And when I say generally, the reason is because it may not be that precise, but the major distinction you want to pay attention to is the present inside of your body or outside of your body. If it's inside of your body, they call that in time. And if it's outside of your body, they call that through time for some reason. Those are the two general orientations. And for the purposes of this, we'll simply use the version that's on the screen, which is the past on the left, present, in the middle, and future to the right. And what happens with any emotion, though, emotions are originally imprinted on the nervous system, or in your DNA, if you prefer. A recent study came out about how memories are passed on with DNA, and that's, for those of us who've used this process, we're aware of that, and we'll refer that to a genealogical source, meaning it's passed on from generation to generation. So in the past, something occurs, something that has you go, crinkle up, or maybe it's loud. It could be as simple as a loud crash, when you're 2 months old. Certainly could be during birth, which has you scrunch up. It could be, a fight when you were a young child that you saw, and you couldn't make sense of it. The nervous system wasn't developed enough to make sense of it and to process it. So what happens is there's some imprint of that emotion. The emotion is generated because you can't make positive meaning from it. And then a similar event occurs, and so on until you have a gestalt of what we're, let's say, fear. And then all that needs to happen in the present is something a little bit similar to that event, which triggers off this disproportionate reaction of fear, because it's not really about the event, it's about those previous 20. We know this from, relationships. Something happens in a relationship, you get angry with somebody, and it's really not about that thing. It seems disproportionate. Like, God, why'd you get so upset because I put the fork on the wrong side of the plate, right? It's, well, you always, really not about that. It's about the previous 10. And then all that needs to happen is, something similar occurs and triggers off this whole set of things, triggers off the whole gestalt. So what we do is we go back in time. We take you back in time. First, we elicit your unconscious organization of time and find out how it's organized. And then we take you back to that very first event. And it's really important that you get the very first event. It's sort of like pulling the root out with the weed. Otherwise, it'll come back. It may not come back as strong. And what happens often is, when I work with clients, is they get fixated on it having to be something they remember, or, the most intense event, regardless of how much I say about it being important. It's the very first event. And so what you just want to do, whether you're a practitioner or whether you're somebody, who's going to be guided through this, just want to make sure that you're focused on the very first event. Is likely the less so weird. It may be a less intense event than the one that is the very, that you're focusing on. So you just want to make sure get back to the very first event. In fact, if this is less effective than we would like, if it's less than a 70% reduction in the emotion, the first place I look is whether or not there's a earlier event. Sometimes it is not an early event, it's an additional learning or resource. And what do I mean by that? Well, what we do is when we take you back in time is we add resources. Resources are typically one word, something like safety or confidence or, ease, or a learning, something like everything's going to be okay or it's not your fault or something like that. And we add those resources to just before and into the very first event. And there's usually a pretty good long list. And having added them all, and usually the client, by the way, you'll know when it's enough. And here's the subtle difference when somebody actually has the full list, and they'll say, I think that's it. And that's usually not it. And there's a descending tonality when it is it, and they'll say, that's it. And that's how you know if the list is complete. Adding all those in, you bring them forward in time, clearing away all the subsequent events where the fear was previously reinforced, all the way up to the present. And then you...
Even when we are jogging, we are listening to something.
And then you have them imagine new resources in the future in situations where they would have had that emotional response. Something called future pacing. It's a little bit of self-hypnosis. It's just like when an Olympic athlete sees himself winning a gold medal. It's the same kind of thing. In fact, the exact same thing. So any questions about that? Any questions or comments, observations or reactions, or anybody who hasn't muted their phone? Because I've muted you all and I'm still unsuccessful. Oh, wait, here's one. Fox asked, what if you can't remember what happened in your past? Good. That's actually easier. In fact, often if you do it symbolically, it's much easier to not get caught up in the actual events. Sometimes a client will get pulled down into the event, and you can notice that obviously if there's color flushes in their face, and you can see the emotional reaction happening. And you want to make sure, one of the beauties of this process is that you can stay dissociated from the event. You don't have to relive it or go through some catharsis or anything that's more invasive to your nervous system. So if you do it symbolically, then what happens is we just see a crack on the timeline or a dark spot, something like that, and your mind knows where to go. Often though, it takes a few times of asking, was that the first event or was there an earlier event? And we simply, I'm pretty exhausted with that. One of the reasons I don't have to do it a second time, I don't think I've had to do it a second time for quite some time. And part of the reason is I'm pretty vigilant about making sure that we have the very first event, so we only have to do it once. It's a great question. Thanks, Fox. Any other questions, comments, observations? Okay, I think everyone's muted now. Thanks for your patience, by the way, on the audio. Part of it is this system that I'm unfamiliar with just updated to a whole new, they remade the whole thing, which is great. But part of it is I didn't realize there were people I saw. How do you make sure you have the first event if it's not remembered? Tabor, you'll see. It's pretty straightforward. There's a part of you that knows, and I simply asked that part. So, good. Any other questions before I ask for a volunteer? We're just going to do this live. It requires somebody besides just me. So anybody who's experiencing one of those emotions, like especially fear or anger or sadness, that just seems to be your patterned response to a lot of things that you would like to reduce. And if there's one of you, go ahead and say that in the chat window, and also tell me what the emotion is. Okay, we've got two. Is there anyone else? Just I was like 3 choices. Okay, great. Good. Um, Go ahead and Fox, let's go ahead and do fear. And I'll go ahead and unmute you. Hi there. Can you hear me? You can unmute yourself. Oh, you don't have a speaker. Okay. Then we'll go ahead and, sorry about that. We'll go ahead and, yes, it is. That is a challenge. We'll go ahead and take Meryl. Meryl, hi, Meryl.
Hi.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Doing great. Thanks. So anger.
Mm-hmm.
It's a skill you have, yeah? Angry?
Yeah, I'm really, I'm pretty good at like repressing that and not feeling that I sort of have a choice to express it
Sure.
fully.
Sure.
Yeah.
What happens if you express it fully?
It's pretty bad. It kind of escalates.
Okay. Yeah.
And it feels almost destructive rather than productive.
Sure. Sure. Good. Okay, good. And what's how frequently does it show up for you?
It doesn't. I've become very skilled at repressing it where I'm not even aware that it's still living, in my body and myself. So, but now and then it'll just like really like want to show itself, and it'll just like pop up, and then I feel like I have to stuff it down.
Sure.
Because
okay, good.
I feel that people just don't want to receive that, or they're not able to.
Yeah. Yeah. Got it. Okay, good.
Yeah.
So there's 2 things here. One is, having a responsible vehicle to express it, a responsible, I'll even say format. But first, let's just get the disproportionate part cleared out so that you can actually, just be angry about whatever's happening, not angry about the last 40 years or whatever.
Okay.
So I'd like to make sure that you're seated.
Yes.
Okay. And when I use that, I like you just imagine as you, settle into the chair and notice the weight of your sit bones against the chair and your feet against the floor, and notice your breath, and get a sense of where tomorrow is around you. And just go ahead and point to tomorrow around you, and let me know the distance and location of where tomorrow is around you.
It's in front of me.
Uh-huh.
Maybe 6 inches in front of me when I'm pointing.
Good. Okay, perfect. And then a week in the future. Where's a week in the future?
Maybe 12 inches in front of me.
Okay. And next year, 2015, September 2015, where's that around you?
I don't have a number for that. I'm a little tired right now.
How far in the future, if you did know, how far in the future can you see?
God, it's a great question. If I did know, how far in the future could I see?
Yeah, how far could you plot in the future? I mean, if September 2015 isn't there for you, or could you, if you did know where September 2015 is, where would it be?
I don't think I have an answer for that at this moment. Yeah.
How about January 2015?
How far ahead?
Well, yeah. Where would January 2015 be if you knew?
A couple of feet.
Okay.
Yeah.
How about February 2015?
Yeah, a little bit further forward than a couple of feet. A couple of feet and a couple of inches.
And how about March 2015?
Pretty much the same.
Same location or same additional distance?
Well, it feels like it's expanding out a little bit now as
Okay.
we move forward.
Good. And how about April 2015?
I don't know. I just kind of feel this knowing that it might be moving upwards now.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good, by the way.
Yeah.
And how about June 2015?
That definitely feels higher.
Okay, good. July 2015.
Yeah, it's like a little higher and a little bit wider.
Mm-hmm. And August 2015.
I just want to say that it feels like it's all connecting now, like almost like connecting the dots, like
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. Yeah. And September 2015 wasn't there for you, so we're approaching it next. I'm just curious
because I didn't have a number in my head mathematically.
Mm-hmm. Okay, got it. Gotcha.
Long day.
Gotcha. The reason I chase it down is because my experience with people who are clinically depressed is that they can't see more than 3 months into the future.
Mm-hmm.
So my next question, if you couldn't see July or August, I was going to ask about sadness. But anyway, I'm glad you have a sense of it now. As a side note, it's not a good permanent change, or it's not. It doesn't stick for very long often because there's just deeper issues at play. But if somebody is depressed, the first thing you want to do, whether it's yourself or someone else, is extend your future timeline out and actually have it go up a little bit. The metaphors really bear out, the future, like things are looking up. It really does bear out in terms of emotional state. So good.
Awesome. Good.
So now, just go ahead and get a sense of where yesterday is around you. Where's yesterday?
Just like a couple of inches in back of feels like my middle back.
Okay.
Behind my heart, or so middle upper back.
And a year ago?
Feels much more extended back, but also lower.
Okay, good. And then 10 years ago?
Wow, 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So where is it?
Around you, yeah.
Around me.
And, distance and location.
I feel like it's kind of like radiating around my solar plexus.
Okay.
And from the back to the front, almost like kind of like a belt.
Interesting. Great. Good. Cool. And your birth, go ahead and plot that. And where's that? Where's that location?
Well, it feels a lot lower.
Mm-hmm. Is it also wrapped around your body?
No.
Okay.
No, it feels more like just like lower, like ankles, or my feet or ankle area.
Okay, great. And in the present, right now, is it in your body or outside of your body?
Is what in my body?
The present.
The
right
present?
now.
Yes. It's in my body.
Okay, great. And where's that location in your body? Where is it in your body? Or where does it pass through your body?
Shoulders.
Okay, great. Perfect. And for the purpose of this exercise, we're actually going to go ahead and have you, first of all, just imagine yourself floating in a safe, comfortable chair, whatever kind of chair that may be. I've heard of everything from, thrones to regular old office chairs, but whatever you feel would be safe, comfortable, and powerful for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And go ahead and float above your timeline. Just go ahead and leave it down there beneath you. Float way up in the air above the present directly beneath you, and the future stretching out in front of you. And allow the past to sort of straighten itself out and straighten out behind you. And as you float safely above the timeline, looking down on the present, go ahead and float even higher. And as you float safely above the timeline, I'd like you to go ahead and get a sense of the anger in your body. And you're familiar with it. It's a skill you've had in the past. So go ahead and allow yourself to feel those sensations just enough so that we can use them to guide you back. And once you have those sensations that we label anger, go ahead and let me know.
Okay.
And take that feeling and float way back into the past, way back over the past until the very first time you felt those feelings. And if you were to know, was it before, during, or after your birth?
Oh God, wow.
First time that arises.
I just got before, though. I wanted to say after my birth, but I was told to. I was like, yeah, it's before.
Good, yeah. It will serve you to not filter that. And it may be in conflict to your beliefs as well, and that's fine too.
No, it's definitely not.
Good. And was it in the womb or before?
Before.
And was it pre-life or was it genealogical, meaning passed on from generation to generation?
Passed on.
And how many generations?
3 to 5. Probably a lot more, honestly.
Well, just
35?
35. Great. Well, ask the part of you that knows. Just drop inside and ask the part of you that knows how many generations and what answer pops up.
Okay. Well, now I'm getting 8, so let's stay with that number.
Well, that's 3 plus 5.
Oh, yeah.
So go ahead and float back and just imagine 8 generations on your timeline. Go ahead and float back, ticking those generations off, maybe like lampposts on a highway or however you want to see it is fine. And in that ancestor's lifetime, 8 generations ago, was it before, during, or after their birth?
Can you ask me that question again?
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
In that ancestor's lifetime, 8 generations ago, was it before, during, or after their birth when they experienced anger for the first time?
During.
Excellent. And go ahead and float back to during their birth, 8 generations ago on your timeline. And as you float safely above the timeline, looking down the timeline, ask the part of you that knows, was this the first event? Or was there an earlier event where anger was felt?
Yeah, there was an earlier event where anger was felt.
And was it in the womb or before?
In.
And was it first, second, or third trimester?
Second.
Go ahead and float back a little bit further to the second trimester in the womb in that ancestor's lifetime. And as you float safely above that event, looking down the event, again, ask the part of you that knows, was this the first event or was there an earlier event?
Earlier.
And was it first trimester or was it additional generations or previous lifetimes?
When you say additional generations, what do you?
We would add to the 8 number.
Yeah, let's do that. Another one.
Ask the party that knows. What was it? Previous lifetimes or what additional generations?
I'm getting additional.
Okay, great.
Mm-hmm.
How many additional generations? Ask the part.
Okay. 19.
Okay, great. 19 additional or 19 total?
19 total.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank that part of you. Very wise part. Helping us along the way.
Thank you.
And go ahead and float back 19 generations. So 11 more, all the way back to that very first event. You can just see a beacon or something like that floating back to the very first event, 19 generations ago. And if you knew the first time that ancestor experienced anger, was it before, during, or after their birth?
During.
Great. Go and float back to during the birth on your timeline, 19 generations ago.
Yeah.
And again, ask the part of you that knows, was this the first event or was there an earlier event?
It was the first.
Great. Thank you. And as you float safely above this event during birth, 19 generations ago, go ahead and float even higher and let all the anger, if you're still feeling those sensations, go ahead and let that drain out of your body down into that event where it belongs. And if you still feel it, go ahead and float even higher. That's right. Good. And as you float safely above that event, looking down the event, what resources were needed then, or what do you need to learn or accept now to release the anger completely? What resources were needed then, or what do you need to learn or accept now that's positive or empowering about yourself or about the world to release the anger completely? Right.
Well, I just get that this ancestor felt very unsupported and not wanted.
Great. So support.
Yeah.
Great. We can also think of these, by the way, as antidotes or to whatever is ailing them. So support. What else? Being loved. Love. Is that?
Yeah, being loved and wanted, and available to love and be loved. Like, yeah.
Yeah. Great. Good. What else? What are the resources we're needed then, or what do you need to learn or accept now to release the anger completely?
That it's really up to me to create a support system and to let go and release the illusion of not being lovable enough or seen or validated for my gifts.
Yeah, so I'm going to say, let's see. So there's responsibility in there, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
And there's some self-esteem. Is that accurate?
Yeah, and also an antidote would be letting go of self-blame or blaming others for the way things have turned out or are going the direction of my life presently.
Yeah. So let's see, responsibility handles some of that. How about acceptance also?
Yes, self-approval, self-acceptance.
Great.
Or just accepting the way things are without letting any judgments take over.
Sure.
Yeah.
There's a rumor going around, it's been going around for about 3,000 years, or at least 2,500, that all misery is a result of not accepting things as they are. That's just a rumor, though.
Okay.
So support.
Sounds like a good one.
Support, being loved and wanted, being available to love, responsibility, self-esteem, self-acceptance, self-approval, acceptance. And it's up to you to create a support system. And what other resources were needed then? Or what else do you need to learn or accept now to release the anger completely?
That it's not my fault, that other people are free to make their own choices and that it doesn't have to affect me or mean anything about me.
Excellent. What are the resources were needed then, or what else do you need to learn or accept now to release the anger completely?
Forgiveness.
Forgiveness. Excellent. Good. What else?
Hmm. I'm sure I'm missing something, but I'm drawing a blank right now.
Well, I'm not sure you are, but
Okay. I thought I covered all of it, but
okay, good. Good.
maybe not.
No, that's probably it.
Okay.
But ask the party that knows if there's any additional resources that are antidotes to the anger. We have support, being loved and wanted.
Okay. Yes, thank you. It is practicing asking for my needs to be met a lot
Aha.
often, speaking up and not getting pissed off if I don't have my needs met.
Right. Good. Good. Excellent.
And if the person's not able to fulfill my request, then I could then make a different choice and not waste any time or lose any energy, or like waste my energy with the wrong people who are not able to be a contribution to the
Right.
expansion of my life.
Right. Good. Good. Excellent. Good. Anything else?
Maybe learning to maybe practicing more compassion and not taking things personally. That might be related to what I already said on some level.
Okay.
Like just reminding myself somehow or some way that whatever actions or choices others make, that again, it's not based on my lovability or unlovability, and that it actually has nothing ever to do with me. And
Right.
if I could take myself off the hook and really feel that in my body, that would help a great deal.
Yeah. Good.
Going forward. Mm-hmm.
Good. Good. Anything else?
Yeah, I'd like to, instead of reacting, I'd like to just be able to just sit back and not feel like I have to sort of say something to hurt the other person if I feel hurt. So I'd like to work on on that a lot.
Yeah. Are there any additional resources you would have needed then, or anything you need to learn or accept now to release the anger completely? We have support, being loved and wanted, being available to love. Responsibility, self-esteem, self-acceptance, self-approval, acceptance and forgiveness, practicing asking for your needs to be met and speaking up.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not your fault. People are free to make their own choices, and it never means anything about you. It's really never about you.
Right.
And it's up to you to create a support system.
Yes.
Any other resources or learnings?
I think that's about it.
Okay, great. And ask the party that knows, are there any additional resources or learnings, or is that it?
Well, I really like to be able to forgive my father, who I feel was kind of at the root of all of this.
Sure.
And I still haven't quite been able to, even though I have all the tools and know what to do and what to say.
Sure. Yeah, the parental imprints
popping up.
yeah, the parental imprints. There's another process I would do for that. although we can, during this one, we can bring some attention there. Yeah, there's a process that I've modified called parental reimprinting that is, I'd say, mandatory for everybody, regardless of how resourceful your parents were, because you probably, you might have just picked up a weird behavior from them, a strange tick or habit. So I haven't found anybody yet who couldn't benefit from that. And if they were all rational behaviors, then we wouldn't need stuff that worked with the pre-rational and the unconscious. So it makes perfect sense that you know what to say and it's still challenging.
What do you call this technique?
Parental reimprinting.
Reimprinting. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, all of us are living to some degree and to varying degrees of awareness, either in perpetuation of or in reaction against our parents. We're not going to be that and some of that's good. Some of it's great. We develop capacities that we wouldn't have developed otherwise. And it's great to have choice around that. So.
Great. Thank you.
Okay. Ready? As you float safely above this event 19 generations ago during the birth, we're going to have you add these resources down into the event as I name them. And you can just imagine them, being transmitted like luminous filaments or sprinkled in like, magic dust, or however you want to transmit them is fine. Just have them float down like a beautifully wrapped present. And let me know once they've integrated into the event. And you may not see anything change, or you may actually see events differently. That's fine. And first add support. Support. Go ahead and transmit support down into that event, letting me know when that's complete.
Okay.
Good. Being loved and wanted. Being loved and wanted. Transmit being loved and wanted down into the event, letting me know when that's complete.
Yes.
Next is being available to love. Being available to love. Transmit being available to love down into the event. Letting me know when that's complete.
Yeah. Okay.
Responsibility. Transmit responsibility down into the event, letting me know when that's complete.
Are we talking about self-responsibility or responsibility of that ancestor's parents?
Well, I'm going to say that it's the ancestor. We're just adding responsibility, and it is personal responsibility. I mean, there's no you in responsibility. It's just a few eyes.
Personal responsibility.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good. Self-esteem. Self-esteem. Letting me know when that's complete.
Okay.
Self-acceptance. Self-acceptance. Transmit self-acceptance down into the event, letting me know when that's complete.
Yep.
And self-approval. Self-approval. Letting me know when that's complete.
Okay.
Good. Acceptance. Acceptance. Transmit acceptance down into the event, letting me know when that's complete.
Yes.
Forgiveness. Forgiveness. Letting me know when that's complete.
Yes.
It's up to you to create a support system. Transmit that fact, really, down to the event. It's up to you to create a support system. Letting me know when that's complete. Good. Yeah, good.
Okay.
Next is practicing asking for your needs to be met, speaking up. And I'll say that's really just being responsible for your own experience, making sure that your needs are being met, speaking up, and transmit that practice, that orientation down into the event, letting me know when that's complete.
Yes.
The next one, it really seems like it could be parsed into three, but it's not your fault and people are free to make their own choices and it doesn't mean anything about you. I want to suggest that we start with it's not your fault. Not your fault. And transmit that down into the event. Doing great. I don't even know when that's complete. It's not your fault. Yeah.
This is longer. A lot longer.
Yeah.
I'm really trying to be sincere about what's happening now for me.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Just not say yes for the sake of
No. Don't do
but
that.
this one really feels harder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fine. It's not your fault. Just allow whatever needs to happen for that to integrate down into that event. To go ahead and occur. Take as much time as you need in the next 30 seconds to go ahead and allow that to settle into your timeline. It's not your fault.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you. People are free to make their own choices. People are free to make their own choices. Go ahead and transmit that down into your timeline, letting me know when that's complete.
Okay.
Finally, it doesn't mean anything about you. In fact, it almost never means anything about you.
Mm. Okay, that one felt really good.
Good. As you float safely above the event, looking down the event during the birth 19 generations ago, having added these resources: support, being loved and wanted, being available to love, responsibility, self-esteem, self-acceptance, self-approval, acceptance and forgiveness, the knowledge that it's up to you to create a support system, the need to practice asking for needs to be met and speaking up. It's not your fault. People are free to make their own choices, and it doesn't mean anything about you. Having added all of those resources, go ahead and float down into the event and fully reassociate into what was happening then, noticing the anger completely gone. Once you've noticed that, let me know.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, good. Good work. Go ahead and float back above the event. And then notice a symbol, an object floating in front of you that represents all of those resources and this change. And what is that symbol, that object?
I just saw a star.
Perfect. Go ahead and drop that star down into your timeline and allow it to begin to move forward in time, shining its light, leaving its stardust, whatever stars do, leaving in its wake all of those resources, clearing away all the subsequent events where anger was previously reinforced, fully 19 generations, leaving in its wake support, being loved and wanted, being available to love, responsibility, self-esteem, self-acceptance, self-approval, acceptance and forgiveness. It's up to you to create a support system, practicing asking for your needs to be met and speaking up. It's not your fault. People are free to make their own choices, and it doesn't mean anything about you. All the way up 19 generations, clearing away all the subsequent events where anger was previously reinforced. Letting me know once you've reached the present. Take as much time as you need.
Okay.
Okay. You go ahead and float down into the present. And keeping your eyes closed, I'd like you to begin to imagine future situations where in the past you might have experienced anger or something build up to anger. Now you can see yourself responsibly communicating your needs, taking responsibility for your own experience, having self-esteem, self-acceptance, and self-approval, knowing that people are free to make their own choices and it doesn't mean anything about you. See yourself in at least 3 contexts: family, maybe in a professional context, maybe socially, friends. Once you've seen 3 scenarios where you're behaving more resourcefully, starting with being responsible for your own experience, let me know.
Yes. Okay.
Okay, good. Great. And gently reorient yourself to your surroundings and gently come back into your room and open your eyes to the pace that's appropriate for you. Welcome back from your time travels.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, my pleasure. My pleasure. Any questions from anybody for me about the process, or for Meryl about her experience? Questions for me about the process, or for Meryl about her experience? And you can either use the chat window, or you can responsibly unmute yourself and ask the question that way. Thanks, Fox. Any questions?
So I have a question. What is this process called that we just did? Because I missed the first few minutes of your call.
Yeah. It's not really called anything, because it's something I've cobbled together. The original inspiration is Timeline Therapy by Dr. Tad James, but it's definitely not. If you went and got trained by him, it would not resemble this. The primary difference is I call it timeline clearing, for lack of a better, more interesting name. The primary difference is he does the whole thing symbolically, so you don't actually know what the resources are. It's a very rapid thing, and it's just all symbolic, and you capture positive learnings and add resources, and that's all he says. So it's just, hypnosis. I like to do it this way. A few reasons. One is whenever I work with clients, I like to make myself obsolete eventually. So I like them to have it be more of a more conscious mind participation in it, while still handling all the unconscious mind clearing. Also, you're learning to reframe. You're learning to understand that if you add resources, that a situation will be different. And if you build your resources and you expand your resources, then you'll respond and differently in situations in life. So I think there's a couple of learnings there that I think are important. Anyway, so I'll call. I've hacked it. It's an improvement. From Liz, Meryl, how do you feel right now?
Yeah, I just saw. Thanks, Liz. Well, I feel a lot lighter and much more expansive, and kind of like a sense of relief and calmer, and yeah, just sort of like happier on some level.
Good.
Freer, I would say, freer, not as constricted or
yeah. Good.
sort of wound up.
Good.
Yeah.
Track the difference. A lot of people, they in the past have known people to make the error of seeing how it's the same, and it might be 10% different or 10% the same, but you want to track how it's different. If you track how it's the same, then you'll start to look for evidence of that. You want to make sure that you're focused on how it's different. And please let me know what you notice. And over the next week, just notice in terms of intensity, duration. And yours is a little interesting because you should actually see yourself expressing more rather than in addition to not feeling angry as much as you would have. So it's a little bit more nuanced for you to track that, but I'm certain you can do it.
I'm excited.
Good, good. There's a conscious mind practice that goes along with anger. There's a few that I assign with certain emotions. And with anger, there's something to remember, and that's that anger requires blame. And it doesn't matter if it was a broken agreement or if you're absolutely in the right. It still requires blame. And it also indicates a cross boundary. Now, that boundary may be an agreement, right, or something that we have all agreed on as a culture, like violence or theft or something like that. But you still want to run this practice on yourself. It will do a few things. One, it will increase your capacities in terms of responsibility. And the second is it can also help you build empathy with the person as the extra credit, but also help you build structures in place so that you don't simply continue to suffer. And it's asking yourself a few questions. The first question is, how am I responsible? And the second is, what can I learn? And it has to be positive or empowering about yourself or about the world. It can't be, well, I learned people are crap. It's not. It needs to be positive and empowering. Or what would you do differently? And the third question, which is sort of extra credit, is where have you done that in the past yourself, or where are you doing it now, but in a different context? I have this thing about people's awareness when they're driving. I drive fairly aggressively, but I also am driving for two people. I figure I'm driving for me and the other person that I'm navigating around. But I was in a grocery store and bumped into this woman's cart, this elderly woman's cart, almost knocked her over. Right? It's really the same kind of thing. I wasn't aware as I was passing her, or something like that. So it's a place we can look. Anytime you take responsibility, by the way, it builds self-esteem. So regardless of the context, whether that's paying your bills yourself or early or whatever, or whether it's taking responsibility in a situation, it will build your capacity. Self-esteem defined as knowledge of your efficacy and feeling your to life. So all things are true. And Meryl, I'm going to have you, if you don't have any questions, I'm going to have you mute yourself now. So my echo isn't causing more to stay on the call.
Okay.
Any questions?
I'm not sure how to do that.
Oh, I'll do it for you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. Okay. Any other questions, comments, observations, reactions in the chat window?
Or can I do it over the mic?
Oh my gosh. Yes, you may.
You took her back 8 generations, and then there was the little double step where you went back 19 generations. What was that? How did you get from 8 to 19?
I simply asked her to ask the part of her that knew if that was the first event or if there was an earlier event where she felt those feelings.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, you just want to make sure it's the very first event. Otherwise, the effect isn't nearly as, well, it's just not nearly as effective if you don't get the first event.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You kept pressing for more resources until you really got a solid sort of drop. They're like, okay, now we're.
Yeah. Yeah. The alternative to both of those is that her and I would have to talk again next week and do it a second time. That's the alternative. So I like to be thorough first, so we don't have to do it second. And it's always possible that we have to do it a second time, but at this point, it's definitely the first event. Yeah. Thanks for the question. Fox is asking, self-esteem is knowledge of your what? So self-esteem, which is probably the most important and the least understood, or most misunderstood, I should say, not least understood, but most misunderstood concept in popular psychology today. I'm going to lean heavily on Dr. Nathaniel Branden, and the definition is 2 areas really. There's 2 components. And I'd say they're front of the hand, back of the hand, or they arise at the same time, but they're independent. So it's difficult to really distinguish that. But they're sort of parallel paths, and they don't relate to each other. But a lot of people have them collapsed. And one is knowledge of your efficacy, that you're competent to handle life. That's the what life throws at you. That's the first one. And the second one is feeling you're appropriate to life, or that you deserve to be happy, or self-respect. So self-efficacy and self-respect, those are the two primary domains. I've fleshed that out quite a bit in one of my articles in the self-esteem quadrophenia, I call it. Although I'm going to have to change that because there's more than 4 now. But one of them is how people collapse the personal and the practical. And the personal is that self-respect, and the practical is self-efficacy, or results and meaning get collapsed a lot. And we can see a little bit of that in what Meryl said. Just evidence of that. For me, it's one of the most important things to develop. I also, just to be responsible, I use ego development, and I use it quite positively, pretty much interchangeably with healthy self-esteem or high self-esteem. So I'm not as rigorous as I would like to be about making sure that, because there are subtle differences, but I use them almost interchangeably. So ego development in the healthy sense, you're solid in yourself, you're internally validated, but you're externally referenced, meaning you still care, you're paying attention to what's happening out there. You just don't make it mean anything about you. Meaning is internally validated. Efficacy is externally verified. So good. Thanks for that question. I always love self-esteem questions. Any other questions? Any other comments, observations, or reactions?
Can I make one follow-up on the self-esteem question?
Yeah, sure.
I've been wondering about it since I heard you talk about it before. So the self valuing, the self-worth aspect of the self-esteem is basically just like a given, right? Like that doesn't develop over time. That's just like, well, you are valuable and worthy just because you breathe or something like that.
Yeah. So right. So knowledge of your efficacy, that's because it's knowledge, it has to be built over time. The part you're asking about is murkier. It's really a matter of accepting that your self-worth is a settled matter. We all have different value, but we all have the same worth. So, we all have different value. We can bring value to different situations, and some people bring more value than others. Some people subtract value. But we all have the same worth. Your self-worth is a settled matter. It's, your divine right. It's one way to think about it. But it's the acceptance of that part needs to be developed at times. Sometimes it is given, but people don't accept that immediately. It's usually not.
But it's that givenness of self-worth that helps you esteem yourself, even if you determine that your value is still kind of low or something like that.
Right, because you wouldn't make that mean anything personal about yourself. You wouldn't say, well, I'm therefore, a horrible person or
a bad,
because I can only make $50 an hour or whatever. You wouldn't do that. Or if
you but I'm not less worthy because of it.
Correct. That's right. You command less value, but you're worth the same. It's
kind of like a younger child is less valuable given that definition, less capable, but they're not worth less as a human being.
That's correct. Yep.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
And that's why, we, rescue strangers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we all have the same worth.
Mm-hmm.
Good. Okay, good. Excellent. Thanks. Any other questions or comments or observations before I get into the very short promotional part of the evening? It's going pretty rapidly. Okay. Really quickly, there's really only one upcoming event I want to talk about. If you want to work with me personally, by the way, I work with people. It's really 2 domains I work with. One is personal evolution, which is this comprehensive, clearing your past, building solid esteem for yourself, and living consciously, with your values and all those things. And then the third phase, of course, is integration, making myself obsolete. That's one aspect of my business. The second aspect is helping practitioners build their business, helping them build a six-figure practice. That's really two domains I work in terms of one-on-one work. And if you're looking for that, then go ahead and you can go ahead and send me an email through the Evolve Co website, or simply reply to your confirmation email for this webinar, saying you're interested in having an initial chat. And what that means is, we'll talk for 15 to 30 minutes, and if I'm reasonably certain I can assist you, we'll go ahead and schedule a complimentary exploratory session that can be up to 2 hours. Really everything to gain and nothing to lose there. The event I'm going to talk about is creeping up on us, even though it's not till next year. That time will fly, and it'll be a 3-month course, and it begins February 28th and March 1st. There'll be three-day weekends, 6 full days over the course of 3 months with support in between. It's really for practitioners, coaches, and it's evolutionary sales, integrating your purpose and your prosperity. We'll cover everything from, the ethical sales system I've developed to social media marketing, to, everything in between, everything you need to know, really, all the nuts and bolts, it's really a complete training. And the last time I did it was over 3 days, and that was really an interesting learning experience. So we're going back to the way it was originally intended and the way it was taught the first couple of times. And that is over a few months. There'll be support webinars weekly in between. So if you're interested in that, again, reply to the confirmation email and just let me know that you want to talk about that, and we'll have the same process go on. Any questions about any of that? This was recorded after I clean up what I can clean up of me barking at people to try to get the the mute button working. I'll go ahead and send it out to you guys so you can review it as you like. And thank you again for allowing me to contribute to you.